Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Off Season, a video series where I cover some of the stuff that I'm doing to my own personal builds back here at home. On this episode, we're going to do a little work on the blue car and see some of the stuff that I've done that I didn't cover in a video or photos or anything like that, like these RGN CTA canards, little things like the glow combination lamps. Also got the new carbon fiber door cards installed and operating on both sides. They came out really nice. I didn't have the OEM door cards to begin with, so it was good to get that all tied up and finished and looking proper. I do sell these on the storefront, so if you're interested, go check it out. Fair warning, they are very expensive. But the main thing we're going to cover in this video is installing the new Greddy V-mount radiator and intercooler. If you remember, this is a ground-up build. I started with nothing but the rolling chassis, so I had no OEM parts whatsoever. Finding OEM parts has been very difficult, and I don't want this to be a car that is predominantly built with aftermarket parts. So most of my time is spent browsing the internet trying to find used and new FD parts, which has proven to be extremely difficult. Over the past month or so, I've been dealing with a couple online parts sites that claim to have certain things in stock, but then end up not having inventory, and then not respond to my emails or phone calls, and then I've had to get the bank involved to get my money back, and it's been a headache. I did find this brand new fan shroud, which I'm pairing with RX-8 fan motors and fan blades per my friend Ilya, who is my go-to source for all things RX-7. They pull way more CFM, the fan blades are more efficient, and the motors are more efficient, and it's a direct fit into the OEM FD fan shroud, so I figured I would just go that route. All you have to do is change the wiring plug up a little bit, but not a huge issue at all. So let's go ahead and get these unboxed and installed into the shroud, and then attached to the new radiator, and then we'll tackle the next issue that we run into. I also learned that at the current ride height, I cannot fit a low-profile jack under the car, and the car obviously doesn't run, so I got to push the car up onto these ramps to be able to get it up in the air, which was surprisingly easy. These ramps have a nice angle, so it wasn't really difficult at all, and the car's super lightweight. So right off the bat, I ran into a pretty major issue with this install. You can see the radiator's held on with zip ties here. That's because the previous owner, not the person I bought it off of, but whoever owned it before him, cut the brackets that held the front front chassis crossmember on. He must have had some sort of fully custom V-mount or engine setup, I'm not sure. But those brackets are spot welded on to the frame rails, and they were just completely missing. That wouldn't be such a big deal if I was also doing something custom, but I'm building a very off-the-shelf sort of car, and the Greddy V-mount, both the radiator and the intercooler, rely on that crossmember as a mounting point. It predominantly holds most of the weight of both cores. So I was left with only 3 options, really. Either find an OEM bracket, which are flimsy and weld it on, which I really didn't want to do. Design a new bracket and also weld it on. Again, I don't want to do because I don't want to mess up the paint in the engine bay. Or 3, make a bracket and find a way to bolt it to the frame rail. So I ended up 3D printing a few bracket designs as well as a backing plate design that I had the intention of fitting inside the frame rail to hold the bracket on. That didn't end up working because the dimensions I was working with are just too tight and small. But my friend Christian recommended that I use a nut plate. So I used a couple of M8 nut plates, which actually worked out perfectly. And you'll see later in the episode how I went about doing that. Yeah, usually when Christian has a suggestion, it's the correct one. The RX-8 fan motors and fan blades actually came from JP3 Motorsports, who put together a little upgrade kit. Well, it's nice because it includes all the OEM parts and also RX-8 motor connectors and terminals, along with the items you need to repin the FD connectors, or in my case, I'm using a Greddy extension for the V-mount kit, but they put it together in such a way that makes it really easy to convert the FD cooling to RX-8. And this is where the cross member typically mounts if there was a bracket there. I had a friend in a RX-7 group chat get me the distance that the bracket mounts actually from the top of the frame rail, so I can get the proper height of the cross member once it's installed. You can see here real quick the bracket that I made. It's super simple, and I ended up cutting it out of box tubing, aluminum box tubing. So it was very straightforward. These are what the nut plates look like. It's got a floating 8mm provision in the center, and then 2 holes on the side that I will rivet into the frame rail to hold it in place using these 3mm countersunk rivets. Not too much room to work with here, but just enough to put the nut plate on the back of a magnet and maneuver it so I could get the first rivet in, partially compress the rivet, and then bend it upwards to get the second rivet in place, and then fully mount it. And that's kind of what it looks like all finished up. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side and then move on to making the actual bracket from 3 by 1.5 inch box tubing. After I got the brackets cut, I made some tops out of 1.5 inch by 1/8 inch thick aluminum that I'll have Christian weld to the top of the bracket. That unit altogether will sit 1.5 inches from the top of the frame rail, which is where the factory cross member sits, so it should be pretty perfect. Once I had both sides completed, I kind of temporarily mounted them where they would go and then put the radiator and the intercooler back in to see how everything lined up, and it seems like everything is pretty spot on. I'll have to adjust the front mounts of the radiator just a little bit, but everything seems pretty good. This was some strange piece of sheet metal, maybe ducting, I think, that the previous owner had riveted to part of the radiator support, but I had to drill it out because it was blocking where the intercooler was supposed to mount. Here you can kind of get a feel of how everything is supposed to sit and mount to that cross member, so you can see how critical it was that I was able to reinstall that again. Yeah, it seems like everything lines up great, and once I have the brackets welded, painted, and then I can drill the tops in and bolt the cross member in more securely, and then see if all the appropriate holes line up correctly or if something needs to be adjusted a little bit more. But from what I can tell now, it looks perfect.